2018 is here, and it's a continuation of what we saw in late 2017 with cold temperatures and winter precipitation. But has it helped the drought situation in the southeast? And what can we expect for the west of winter into spring? The January Water Resources Outlook is where you'll get some of those answers. Let's get started with Jeff and a look at the climatology.
As we always do, let's show the past 30 days of precipitation, and we see most areas have seen between 1 to 3 inches of precipitation since Christmas, and a good portion of this has been in the form of frozen precipitation across the region as colder temperatures have prevailed since the holidays. As far as how this compares to normal, here are the departures from normal, and most areas are running below normal by an inch or two, some even more than 3 inches there in the darker orange across Alabama, Georgia, and the Florida Peninsula, actually Florida Panhandle. So overall, most of the southeast has seen less precipitation than typical since the holidays. And this has had an impact on stream flows. Many stream flows and rivers now running below normal across the region, with the exception of the Florida Peninsula, where stream flows are in the normal range. And this has had an impact on reservoirs. Falls and Jordan are running below their guide curves in North Carolina right now, but Kerr is near guide curve, and Lake Norman is run a couple of feet above guide curve. In South Carolina, Watery and Lake Murray are near guide curve, but the Savannah Project still seeing pools below normal in the system, with Hartwell and Thurman 5 feet below their rule curve. Southwest to Georgia, we see all the Georgia reservoirs are near or above target, the exception being Lake Lanier, but even there we have seen the lake come up considerably the past year, as we were down near 1060 feet last year at this time. And as we look west into Alabama, we see most reservoirs are near their target pool. So below normal precipitation since the holidays, and how has this influenced the drought situation in the southeast? We see short-term drought now developing and expanding across central Alabama, and now abnormally dry conditions or drought is being observed across most of the southeast except the Florida Peninsula. So overall, we begin the recharge season on the dry side. Where will we be going headed into the spring? Todd will talk about the future forecast here shortly.
Well, I'll be handling the meteorology today, and as of today, high pressure over the southeast is keeping us dry with near normal temperatures. Our next system will be pushing into the southeast this weekend. Low pressure should develop along the front as it pushes into the Gulf of Mexico. This means that the heaviest rainfall will likely be in the Big Bend of Florida and the south portions of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. I will show a 7-day total for rainfall in just a moment. The low pressure that will bring all that rain will be off the Atlantic coast by Monday, and high pressure will again build into the southeast, keeping us dry for a few days. We will look to the end of next week for our next rain chances. Seems we are on a pattern of having weekend rainfall, and as much as it doesn't fit in with some of the recreational weekend plans, we do need the rain right now, as Jeff alluded to earlier. So based on that one frontal passage, the area of heaviest rain could see some widespread totals up to 3 inches, with isolated higher totals along the Gulf and Atlantic coasts, impacting the Suwannee Basin and some of the smaller basins in the Florida Panhandle and South Georgia. Week 2 looks active also, as we will see more weekend rain that could give us another good chance of above normal rain, maybe a little further north, so that some of those other drought-affected areas see some relief. One last outlook I will show you. Now, this is an experimental product created by the folks at the Climate Prediction Center. This product is issued each week on Friday. It's a 3 to 4 week outlook. Now, this was produced last Friday and includes some of the precipitation period forecast period from week 2 that we saw just a moment ago. The reason I show this, we have been seeing some consistency in the longer term forecasts, that we are going to get a bit more of a zonal pattern that could lead to above normal rainfall in the southeast. We keep seeing it in the models, but it stays in week 2. It keeps staying a little further out. In other words, the models are kind of getting ahead of themselves. There's always the chance that this pattern won't develop, just won't materialize, but the models are pretty good at getting those broad patterns correct. Just sometimes the timing can be a bit off. This is something we will have to watch closely in the coming weeks. Well, here is the January La Nina watch. It looks like we have had our coolest temperatures in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, and the area will be warming and return to neutral conditions in early spring. So this still means that our forecasts are leaning heavily on the La Nina currently going on. The Climate Prediction Center is still looking for below normal precipitation for the month. I've shown a couple of things that contradict this forecast, so again, we will have to watch closely as we get into February. The seasonal forecast from February through April also is a very La Nina influenced. So far, their forecast for below normal precipitation this winter into spring has been very accurate, so it's hard to bet against this forecast. And then as we go back into neutral conditions for late spring and early summer, there's not much to influence our forecast, and therefore equal chances for above, near normal, and below normal rainfall. So here's our expectation for the Carolinas. Factoring in antecedent conditions and future projections, there is an above average chance the drought will worsen. Flooding is possible but less likely and below what we are used to or normal. Our confidence in this forecast is pretty good but not great. For the western portion of our area, that includes Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and the Florida Panhandle, much of the same. Drought conditions worsening seems most likely, and chances for a normal flooding recharge season seem less likely. Our confidence in this forecast is similar to that of the Carolinas. We have slightly more confidence in the Florida forecast because there is such a strong link between dryness in the area during a La Nina. And the Florida Peninsula has been drier than normal, making drought a distinct possibility before we get to May and the beginning of the rainy season. Flooding seemed more likely in early winter, only because they were so wet going into the winter. But that has changed, and while they remain in the normal stream flow range, they are quickly falling, and the rivers may start to show some below normal conditions by our next water resources outlook. And so the bottom line, in the short term, it looks like a little more active rainfall pattern. As I mentioned before, having rain on the weekends in the coming weeks, and maybe a little more frequent as we get into February. Like I said, there's still some uncertainty there. It's still not expected to cause much flooding. We're still not seeing that, especially since they're so spread apart, and we start out that everything is so dry right now. As for the long term, February looks like it could be rainy, but there is even more uncertainty in that forecast. Like I said, I showed kind of a little bit of both, a little bit of a reason to see some dryness and a reason to see some wetness. So February is going to be kind of iffy right now. So again, something we have to watch very closely. As for the rest of the season, they've been good. The Climate Prediction Center has been very good with the dry forecast, and that's what we've been most of this winter. So it's very possible that that's what we could see through the rest of the winter. Again, something we'll be watching very closely. And we will address during our next Water Resources Outlook, which we plan to record on February 21st, 2018.